What we've seen in the last few years is a weird change in American politics, to be people do not see, which is that we've seen more and more African Americans, particularly African American men, voting Republican. It's not huge numbers yet, but we're seeing the shift take place. There was a point in time where prior to 2016, Democrats would usually get around 93 to 95% of the black male vote. In more recent elections, it's been closer to 85 to 88% of the black male vote. President Trump indeed got over 20% of the black male vote in 2020. This comes down to many issues and many reasons behind it. And to discuss this, we're joined by the president of the Black Conservative Federation, Mr. Diante Johnson. Diante, how are you doing today? All right, I think we lost Diante, but we're going to come back to him in just a second. We're going to bring in our panel to talk about this until we can get Diante reconnected. Dr. Carr, well, why do you think we've seen these numbers of African American men vote, or for some reason suddenly deciding to kind of switch parties or being less enthusiastic about the Democratic Party as we've seen previously?
Well, I don't generally narrate it in terms of gender, but whoever is switching to what is called conservative, but is really in the moment we're seeing now, white supremacists and fascists, I'll just reduce it to one word: ignorance. We are at an inflection point in the earlier conversation about the January 6th committee. Unlike the Watergate era, the 1970s, unlike even the September 11th commission, where there was some bipartisan fact finding, that kind of thing, we've reached a stage now where the white nationalists have decided that there's not going to be a country if they can't run it. While we're looking at politics in Congress and elections, the case that was argued 2 weeks ago before the Supreme Court, Moore versus Harper, with the independent state legislature theory, the argument that state legislatures can basically replace their will for the will of voters, the will of their state Supreme Courts, the will of governors. This, and I expect that Moore versus Harper is going to affirm that theory. One which was birthed, by the way, in a concurrence by William Rehnquist in Bush versus Gore. We're looking at a moment now where the white nationalists have decided that if they can't run it, they will destroy it. This is something that is kind of without precedent, not even during the U.S. Civil War. And by the way, in the $1.2 trillion package that you mentioned passed the Senate and it's going over to the House now, that attempt to shore up preventing state legislatures from stealing elections, the reform in terms of the Electoral Count Act was in that package. So maybe they've headed that off. I'm bringing that up to say that the black men, the black women, but majority black men who are moving to the conservative party, so-called voting for the Republican Party, I guarantee you put a pistol in their mouth and say, I'm gonna blow your brains out if you don't know anything about what I'm gonna blow your brains out if you can't explain what Dr. Carr is talking about right now. There'd be a lot of dead brothers in the world, because they don't understand. Cultural conservatism is different than the politics of what's going on now. They think they're voting for their interests, but in fact, they're switching to a party that has not only their interests in heart, they don't have the interests of the poor whites at heart. And we're at that inflection point. I think ignorance is driving this switch.
I think it's a great way to set the table. I think we do have Diante Johnson, president of Black Conservative Federation, on with us. Diante, you there?
I'm here.
All right, so Diante, I think Dr. Carr gave a great intro into what many people think when it comes to the quote unquote conservative movement as it is, but we're still seeing the numbers tick up. In Georgia, Herschel Walker had campaign offices set up in College Park and East Point talking to African American male voters. We are working for Glenn Youngkin's campaign there in Virginia. There was a big emphasis on reaching out to African American men. Why do you think we're seeing these numbers shift, where we're seeing more and more black men vote for Republicans versus black women who are still voting for Democrats at a 95+% rate?
Well, the biggest thing is the attention for black men. In the Democratic Party, black men have been the forgotten group. For far too long, we have made our focus on the LGBT community and women. And so black men are still left behind. One of the biggest one of the biggest issues we talk about is the pro-life movement. We always talk about, well, how does the woman feel? Is my body, my choice, and when it comes to the women, but no one talks about, well, what about the man? The man was involved in that process of making that baby. Does he not get a decision? Well, let's talk about the men who did not get a choice on whether the woman aborted the child or not, and the psychological problems that they go through later on in life and for the rest of their life. And so that's the biggest thing. The second thing is we need to make the man the head of the household again. We have taken the man out of the household and made women the head of the household. We need to empower men again. And men are seeing that, and they're saying, you know what, the Democrat Party is not for me. It's time to make a change, and I'm coming over to the Republican Party.
I find it interesting that one of the problems I think Republicans have nationally is they got away from running on policy and they got into this kind of running on just the culture war aspects of things. We saw a lot of talk about, internet memes that were replacement for policies. But when you were working with Glenn Youngkin on his campaign, you concentrated a lot on things like school choice, economic development in communities. Talk a little bit about how you can get back to talking about policy debates as opposed to simply this kind of cult of personality that much of the GOP has fallen into.
Well, the Youngkin campaign, the first thing that we talked about was economy, and economy affects everyone. We talked about this, small business owners and the red tape that prohibits them from having a brick and mortar business, the red tape that prohibits them from even being able to have a fully functioning business recognized under state governments and under the IRS codes. And so we did a lot with that. We talked about business grants. We talked about making sure that taxes are low for business ownerships. But then we also, yes, we talked about school choice. We talked about making sure that parents are involved in the school, in their child's educational process. But then, Glenn Youngkin sat down with voters. We sat down and we did roundtables and we said, listen here, Glenn Youngkin said, I'm running for governor. I don't have all the answers, but I want to sit with you and I want to create a team to create the answers. And we gave voters a seat at the table, and we gave them a seat at the table to be able to create the policy points. And that's why Glenn Youngkin was so successful.
Now, why do you think the broader GOP isn't taking that strategy going forward? It seems that you're still getting I call them the entertainers when it comes to the outreach to black voters. Instead of having people who can talk about policy, talk about school choice, talk about economic development, they'll trot out Diamond and Silk, they'll trot out Herschel Walker, they'll trot out entertainers. How can it switch back to a point where you're actually getting people who can talk about actual policies to help communities, as opposed to simply people who are great for internet memes and videos?
Well, those are happening. The RNC did over 1,500 black events this past cycle. However, the media would not broadcast that. The media only broadcasts things that helps gets them clickbaits and helps gets them the views. But the RNC are having those. We did black business roundtables all over the country. We did events for Juneteenth that where we help people set up bank accounts. We brought insurance companies and we brought investors in. We brought people in to talk about financial stability. And unfortunately, those things aren't sexy enough for the media.
And Wolf, then how exactly you get over kind of the stigma that is attached by, you're a black conservative, so you experience it all the time. The minute you say black Republican, black conservative, the kind of the claws come out. How do you think that your group, the people that you're working with, can start getting over that stigma? Because ultimately, I think that the black community does better when you have feet, or when you have irons in both fire. If you're all on one side, then one side gets to ignore you and the other side can take you for advantage. How can you get to a point of parity where it's simply you're getting some good policy out of both sides, so they're actually competing for the black vote?
Well, first we have to realize what a black conservative actually is. I'm reminded of what Secretary of Commonwealth of Virginia, Kate Coach James, always says, is that a black conservative is someone who dares to believe the teachings of their grandparents. We have to really think about the issues that our grandparents cared so deeply about: the First and Second Amendment, common sense regulation, low taxes and limited government, and the sanctity and dignity of life. when we talk about those issues, we are conservative. Black Americans are conservative, and we have to get back to those policies, because those policies is what saved our community and will continue to save our community and will bring our community out of poverty. Tim Scott says that education is the closest thing to magic, and we have to continue to promote an educated society.
Now, why do you think the Republican Party just simply won't come along and just listen to you? Why do you think they still have this adherence to many of the white supremacists who are still part of the party? You still see Confederate flags at Republican events. You still hear Tommy Tuberville saying they want their reparations in crime, or Marjorie Taylor Greene saying they want to destroy Western civilization and replace your children. Why can't the Republican Party just push those people out? Because I think that's a large part of what makes it difficult to recruit from the other side of the aisle. I can agree with you on everything you just said, but then when Tommy Tuberville pops up, I got to leave that meeting. I'm not going to be there.
Well, it's just like we see in the Democratic Party as well, is that we have individuals who have some challenges with messaging. But, the Black Conservative Federation, we offer our assistance to every single Republican in this party. We believe in engaging and not enraging, disagreeing without being disagreeable. But we also believe that the most important thing that we have to do is be solutionists. And we're willing to sit down with anyone across the table to discuss those solutions. So, yes, I encourage every Republican to come to the Black Conservative Federation, and we'll have conversations with them on policy and engaging in messaging. And that's not saying someone already.
And so with that, what are the tangible aspects of the Republican platform that you can say that Black conservatives have contributed? Like when we're talking about shaping policy, shaping the agenda, we hear a whole lot from the National Party about the border, about the Hunter Biden's laptop. Well, when are we going to start hearing conservatives beyond Black conservatives talking about issues for the African American community and things they want to do for them instead of casting them as the enemy?
Well, that's something that we've done during the Trump administration. We saw opportunity zones be a big one, making sure that we're revitalizing Black communities and low-income communities. Being from the South Side of Chicago, I understand exactly what it's like to see dilapidated structures and just abandoned buildings all around my community, and that hurts. So we have to start building up our own communities. School choice has been a major component of building up Black communities, making sure that reading test scores and math test scores are exceeding at high levels. We have to talk about criminal justice reform. That was the major part, the First Step Act of the Trump administration, where we wanted to go and really look at people who have been serving long sentences for crimes they didn't commit. That's the first problem. But also sentencing crimes that were should have been misdemeanors. And so those issues have happened. We vocalize those issues. But if I say again, it's not sexy to the media. And so when we talk about those issues, the media doesn't want to grasp that. And Fox News is just as much to blame as much as CNN. It's just not something that sells. And so we have to be the messengers ourselves, and we have to get those policy points out there ourselves.
And just kind of last thing before I go over to the panel, how do we get into a place where people on both the left side of the aisle and the right side of the aisle can start talking about things that we just want for the Black community, presenting that to both parties, and then going forward from there? Because I would love to hear the Republican plan on reparations, for example. I would love to hear the Republican plan on voting rights. I would love to hear us just simply having an agenda for the Black community that both parties have to come to the table on, the same way the Jewish community does, the same way the LGBTQ community does, the same way the feminist community does. Why is there not just simply a unified Black agenda instead of us kind of going at each other, where you have Black conservatives talking about Black liberals and then Black liberals talking about Black conservatives? We're just spinning our wheels and going nowhere.
Well, we have to get back to, we have to unify, and I agree with you, is that's where we should be. We should differ on policy, but at the end of the day, we should come together to discuss how we can uplift our community. And I believe that the Black community should be both Democrat and Republican. The Black community is the only community in America that gives 90% of their vote to one party. And we need to make sure that we split that. And, I have friends across the aisle. Robert, as you know, I consider you one of my friends across the aisle, that we discuss issues and we can have a civil discussion. We have to get America back there. However, Congressman Byron Donalds started that by trying to become a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, and they told him no. And so we have to it's both sides. Both sides have to be willing to come together. And right now, the Democratic Party has not shown that they're willing to work with Black Republicans in Congress. We have Congressman Byron Donalds and Congressman Burgess Owens, and we just added Congressman Wesley Hunt and Congressman John James. Let's see, with 4 Black Republicans in Congress, will Black Democrats embrace them and say, you know what, we know that we have differences in policy. We know that you're Republican and we're Democrat. Can we sit down and talk about how we can make sure that generational wealth is something that's discussed in our community? Can we sit down and talk about how we can make sure that our children are educated and that our low-income communities are not giving the bottom leftovers in the education system? Can we sit down and talk about the health disparity in America? Can we sit down and talk about these issues? And if we can do that, I guarantee you, I know Congressman Byron Donalds and Burgess Owens real well as Wesley Hunt and John James, and they'll be willing to discuss those. We just have to make sure that we have some participation on the left.
I remember something similar with a good friend of mine, former Congresswoman Mia Love out of Utah, who, great person, wonderful to sit down with, but it was hard to get these bipartisan conversations going. Bringing the panel back in, Erica, what do you think has to happen for us to kind of create a Black platform? Because if you see the Jewish platform, for example, President Obama goes out of office, he drops off $38 billion to Israel. President Trump comes into office, he drops off $40 billion to Israel. President Biden comes into office, he drops off $45 billion to Israel. They don't care who the party is in power. They have their agenda and it's executed. How can we do the same?
I have to be honest with you, Ryder. I'm very disturbed with that entire conversation. Very disturbed. And I honestly don't have shit to offer right now, because to me, this is further proof that the disinformation campaign has been clicking like a well-oiled machine, and that train is not latest at all. Anybody champion a motherfucker Glenn Youngkin, anybody cheering any of those people that he just named, ain't got shit to say to him, because the ship has already sailed.
But Erica, on that point, how do we make progress doing that? Because we just saw, and we talked about this yesterday, we had everybody down in Georgia, talk about how important the Black vote was to them to maintain the Senate. Then they get to Washington, they pass a $1.7 trillion bill without anything in there for Black people. So how exactly do we push our agenda forward if we're not willing to have a conversation across the aisle?
To say, so there's so much in that, because to say, I'm going back to the LGBTQ women not being a focus. There's so many places in this conversation to then jump over to say what happened with the fool known as Herschel Walker walking around in East Point talking to anybody about what? What the fuck was he talking about? What was he talking about? What message, what clear message did Herschel Walker communicate to anybody? So then to say that I'm a part of the 95%, right? Because as a person, I'm going to continue to fight for democracy, because I have been given much as a person. I would dare not do what I needed to do in order to make sure that I have done the work for other people that are around me. So that's first and foremost. So for me, really to respond properly, we would have to go through so much of this conversation that is, for me, 100% ignorant. But to really discount people, who carry children in their wombs. Me and Reecie have done just that. To discount people because of gender. I'm a woman. That is how the Lord made me. It's fucking stupid. And then to take people, which we all have in our family that are LGBTQIA+, and do the same damn thing to me, we have nothing to talk about. Whatever talking points that have been successfully imprinted by the Republican Party, keep that. Get Reese's book about radical Republicans, read that. But honestly, I absolutely have nothing further to say, because so much of what he said in his conversation with you was disrespectful as fuck.
Reecie, as he mentioned you, do you think there's anywhere Reecie, do you think there's anywhere that Black conservatives and Black progressives can come together and create a political agenda going forward where we can get something done across the aisle regardless of who's in power?
First of all, I have to start by saying, period. Period, sis. Thank you for setting it off. Because at the end of the day, I was like aghast at some of the disrespectful comments that were made. Disrespectful, chauvinistic, misogynistic, and ahistorical, talking about daring to believe their ancestors. Our ancestors believed in limited government when we were trying to get the Civil Rights Act passed, when we were trying to get desegregation. That was limited government? I don't think so. So, I mean, there's so many ahistorical things. As far as can we go hand in hand, kumbaya? No, we cannot. As long as what people are pitching is really rooted in white supremacy, we can't be hand in hand with that. And I'm not saying that Democrats are perfect. I'm not saying that all Republicans ain't shit. However, I'm not seeing nothing that I can really rock with in what is being said. And I just want to go back to the website, too, because I looked it up because, I mean, you know, I didn't get a lot of advance notice about who was coming on, but I looked up this Black Conservative Foundation Federation. And one of the things that it says individuals, families, and communities makes the best decisions regarding their own well-being, not the government. Apparently, that does not include women and our bodily autonomy and our ability to have or not have children. And I would also like to point out that the Republican Party is trying to attack contraception. Right now in the state of Texas, a judge has ruled that if you're a teenager, you cannot get access to contraception. And guess what? In Texas, abortion is illegal. So you can't get contraception, you can't get an abortion. And y'all want to talk about the head of the household and the family. What kind of family is it having a forced birth? When you're not having forced marriages, and I'm not for that either, you're not having forced fathers, you're only having forced birthing happening to mothers. And so all of this shit is just completely ridiculous to me. It sounds good, some of the talking points. If Republicans were actually about some of the stuff, low taxes. I'm with low taxes. My taxes too damn high. I ain't got no stimulus. I ain't got no nothing. If that's what they were actually about, we might have a friend in Jesus with that. But so much of what the Republican Party is about, their receipts are all in sexism and bigotry, particularly against women. And then you throw in Black people, and then you throw in LGBTQI people. And yes, they are people, and they are absolutely deserving of humanity and equal rights like anybody else. Then we got a big problem. So no, ain't no alliance, no way. Especially when you start off acting like Black women are getting or being bestowed some kind of attention or grace. Not when we looking at people dragging the hell out of Megan Thee Stallion for getting shot. I don't think so. So we living in two different worlds. We gotta have a shared reality before we can march forward together. And I ain't hosting, so I ain't got to be as nice as I was last time.
But kind of on that point, you know, we just saw the Respect for Marriage Act, for example, be signed into law with bipartisan support. You had conservatives on one side being against it, you had progressives on the other side being against it because it didn't go far enough. They found a compromise position in the center where they were able to protect LGBTQ marriage as well as interracial marriage. If they can come together, two sides of the aisle, get a majority done to get something done, why can't we do that for the issues in our community instead of just kind of saying, well, once we have a super duper majority for Democrats, then maybe we can get something done for Black people. I think there has to be some kind of way to, we don't have to agree on everything, but can we find one thing to agree on to get done?
Can we agree on not having forced births? Can we agree on contraception? For me as a woman, that's a start.
And let me just add this, because this was not planned, but let me just add this. I literally lost a pregnancy not so long ago, and I was not public about it. I was really private about it. I lost a pregnancy, and I'm just thinking about if Roe v. Wade had been overturned for that. I didn't even know I was pregnant. What my big grown self had already had a child. Did not know I was pregnant. It was by the grace of God that I was like, I still keep having this pain. And it was a couple of weeks after I started feeling some discomfort in my body, told myself after work, no, you have to go to the hospital. And it was a doctor that noticed all of the pain on my face that took me and said, absolutely, you have a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. And if we do not rid you of this fetus, this pregnancy rather, you will die. He told me, had I not come to the emergency room that night, I would have died. And my partner was deployed in Afghanistan at the time. So for anybody to talk about a woman having babies, that is not light work. Reecie just did this not even 2 years ago alongside a pandemic. You want to sit down and have a conversation and ask about how difficult that was? So no, we cannot have a conversation, because to come on and make comments like that and not even understand about what an abortion is, what I had was an abortion, but it was something that saved my fucking life. So no, you don't get to come over here and have all of this long commentary and then ask the question, can we all get on the same page? What the hell are you talking about? You have asserted yourself as a person who should be able, because you are a man, period. You have asserted yourself as a person who should make decisions and be the decision bearer to possibly my own life or death. No, we cannot sit down and have a conversation. You were disrespectful as fuck the entire time, and you did not know who the fuck you were talking to.
And Dr. Carr, I wanted to bring you in before we wrap this segment. Do you think there's anything, voting rights, criminal justice reform, economic development, is there anywhere that we can find a common ground to get things done? Or are we just simply going to say that we just have to have complete power on one side and before we can actually push that agenda forward? Because we have a lot of stuff sitting for Congress that we're going to need. Some of these things we need like 5 senators to come across to get passed, but we can't do that because we don't have any bipartisan agreement.
Right. Well, let me ask you, Robert, you're a pricing attorney. How long do you think it's going to be before they go to court to challenge the defense of marriage, the act that just passed in terms of LGBTQ marriage? They going to court for that?
Oh, absolutely. I'll be there next term.
No question. My point is this. These crackers have loaded the deck. They're not just going for legislation. They have eviscerated the court. Now, I feel for my brother Diante, because clearly the education system in Chicago failed him. We need stronger public education, not vouchers. But I'm a man. I can't have a child, but I can make one. And but not without a woman. Why do I say that? I think the white nationalists are clear about this. They want a theocracy. The blackface white nationalists, which is what I'm calling black conservatives, who will go down the line in support of these white nationalists, who basically have a rhetorical ethic, because if you're pro-life, there's no way you back Herschel Walker, a serial forcing women to have abortion man, unless, of course, you don't believe what you're saying. And I hope, is Diante still here? I ask him, did he support Herschel Walker?
I think he had to hop off.
Oh, that's too bad, because the white Christian nationalist Marjorie Taylor Greene did, and last I checked, Herschel Walker was paying for people terminating pregnancies like he was playing lottery tickets. In fact, I guess he was playing lottery tickets on the off chance that he might actually not be able to force a woman to bring a pregnancy to term. He kept paying the price. But my point is this. As a man, as a human being, and as an American by force, because I never asked to be here, F this structure, F this country, F all of its crimes. Let me be very clear. F the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. I vote consistently Democratic because I'm in a mode right now of self-defense. Now, I have friends who would call themselves on the far left, the revolutionaries, who would say both parties are the same. I think that's absurd, but let me tell you why. In a theocracy, you get to tell women that they have to bring pregnancies to term. In fact, you get to do whatever the hell you want with women if you're in a patriarchal theocracy. Black people know something about that, because in 1528, the Spanish tried to enslave us in what is now South Carolina. And about 90 years later, a couple of boats showed up with just short of 20 people of African descent, August 1619. And that state that brother was talking from. And if you were a black woman, they pumped you full of seed, unfortunately too many times by forcing a black man to do it, but many more times by the desire of white men, like the ancestors of people like Glenn Youngkin. And when you came up pregnant, they said, not only are you not going to sneak around here and terminate a pregnancy, we want that baby and a million more, because every time you give birth, it's an ATM. Can we understand where the hell we are? Because see, if you're in Virginia, Glenn Youngkin wants to take all that history out of the book. And if you're a black conservative like Diante Johnson, I'm wondering what your position is on critical race theory in Virginia, brother, since your master wants to take all that information out of the books because it makes white people feel bad. Would it make you feel bad too, brother? Because if that's the case, then race is just a demographic. Race is just a color, and blackness is just a color. It's not a position. It's not politics. It's not culture. Let me end with this. I would feel sorry for that brother if that ignorance wasn't deadly. That ignorance is deadly. We're not talking about Robert, a black agenda. You tried to give that brother an out. There was a time when we talked about black agendas. But if you're going to bring up K. James, let me be very clear. Your grandfather and your grandmother's Republican Party is not the Republican Party of today. Your grandfather's Republican Party that you trying to weigh on, what you calling the Republican Party of your grandparents, that would be the Democratic Party of the Dixiecrats. They have migrated to the Republican Party now. And so if you're going to support the Republican Party, then you're supporting open white supremacy, and they're saying it with their full throats. I'm not saying support the Democratic Party uncritically. Of course, we got to bang on them because too many of them, Joe Biden being one, think that you can have bipartisanship. This isn't about left or right. This is about white nationalism. And you can't make compromise with white nationalism. And if an American Negro shows up caping for white nationalism, you better move, brother, because we're going to have to move over you. Because what we're trying to protect is not just black people. We're trying to protect humanity from people that are determined to wreck it. And if you're going to cape for them, then we're trying to protect you from yourself. But don't be telling black women, don't be telling women what to do. You better put that Bible down, because there's a whole lot of other stuff in that Bible when it comes to stoning, when it comes to cutting people's hands off, when it comes to, I know the New Testament came to fulfill the prophecy of the Old Testament, but these white boys is Old Testament Christians. Women supposed to be barefoot, pregnant, doing whatever the hell they want. And if you're a little underage, Mike Getz may run around, sniff up behind you and say, I can do whatever the hell I want with a female. Don't get cute, because we can go verse for verse. And then you're going to find out these people you supporting would just as soon have you butt ass naked in a damn Virginia field picking tobacco, brother. Stop playing with this.
Well, I think we've come to an agreement that we got a little space to go before we get bipartisanship.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.